welcome to another weekly update. If you've been listening to these for a while, you'll know that I've been moaning about trying to sort the cutover from the intro music to me, and this week I feel like I've done it, so we'll see how it goes when I review the recording. Anyway, I hope you had a good week. There's a couple of interesting things to talk about this week, so let's get straight into it. The first thing to tell you about is there's another version of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit out. And there's a few things inside Microsoft that I think are really interesting and worth watching. And I don't mean Copilot, because we all know about Copilot and the Microsoft marketing machine. And in fact, pretty much all of Microsoft, they are betting the company on Copilot, and that's very obvious. And with good reason. I'm not hating on Copilot at all. But it doesn't need my amplification right now. What I think is interesting is some of the other things that are happening that continue to happen and continue to be funded for people. And one of those, there's a few different things, such as like the dev proxy, which I think is really interesting. But another one is the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and there is a new version of that out now. Version 4 is now GA. It went through. There was a version 3 less than a year ago, last June, and now there's a V4. Graph Toolkit is one of those things that you really should know about, even if you're not going to use it today, so that you are aware of its existence for the next project you come across that needs anything to do with Graph, because you can save yourself a ton of time. If you are getting data from Graph and displaying it and anything like that, working with it, it is really worth knowing what's out there, because there's a ton of stuff built in that you can just drop in and basically not have to worry about building yourself, and it will work really well. I've used this. I've used this in several projects. I think it's really good. There's some new stuff in V4, so this is why it's worth checking. So it's worth just going and having a look and seeing what's available and seeing what the capabilities are. There's some new stuff for to-do items, which is interesting. There's some more. They've built out their people picker a little bit with some extra context. So presence is now part of the control better. And they've got this built-in search application. It's been in preview for quite a long time. And this is good because if you look at searching across Graph, so it's searching lots of different things. Search is a thing that people like to build into their applications. Obviously, it can be useful. There's a bunch of other changes as well in this version, but I just wanted to bring it back to your attention to just to remind you that it exists, and to say, hey, if you're building stuff on Graph, then you really ought to be aware of the toolkit and use it. And you don't have to use it for everything, but it can really light up a UI where it makes sense. And the places I find Toolkit to be the most pleasing, I suppose, is where I can add in integrations to Graph for the user that I wouldn't otherwise have bothered, because it wouldn't have been worth it. It would not have been worth the effort. Whereas with Toolkit, because the effort is so low, suddenly I can say, actually, I could put a people picker in there. Actually, I could show someone's presence here. I could put a nice graph-based searched experience here for finding files. So I like it for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's worth checking out. All right, another month and another update from the Azure Communication Services team. They've got a bunch of new updates to virtual rooms. So virtual rooms is a relatively new capability of Azure Communication Services that builds out the idea that you might want to do more than just one-to-one or group calling. And you might want to set up a space very much like a meeting space, very much like a meeting that you can control with presenters and attendees and lobbies and start and stop times and things like that. And that's what they have as their virtual rooms. And they've just added a bunch of functionality, things like dialing out to PSTN, remote mute call participants, so the ability to kind of programmatically mute people, call recording, and closed captions. So this is really building out to be a very solid set of capabilities for developers. And for developers looking for something, if you're kind of torn between using a Teams experience and controlling that, or using something like this, with every new capability that gets added here, it gets, the lines get more and more blurred between which one you should use when. So this is worth understanding to see what you get. It's not like it's better or worse than using Microsoft Teams as a developer if you need to host a meeting space, because it very much depends on what you're doing, and it very much depends on the user experience that you want to have. But this is definitely worth knowing about, because if you want an entirely automated experience where users don't necessarily see what's going on and they're automatically dragged into a space, and you've got a very customizable UI, or you build it into an existing application, this is absolutely something that is worth knowing about and worth thinking about and worth understanding alongside the regular Microsoft Teams development capabilities. Okay, next up, the Microsoft Teams, cutting back to Microsoft Teams for a minute, the Microsoft Teams Toolkit command line interface is a CLI for the Teams Toolkit. So Teams Toolkit is one of those things I talked about at the beginning that, is a really interesting project that keeps being funded and keeps evolving. And it's good to see that happening. There's now a CLI for doing this. Now, this CLI is really interesting. It's this is one of those things, I'm sure we all have these. We have a list of things that we really know we need to devote. We just need to take a couple of days off, devote some time to learning, and then we'll be so much better for it. For me, the Teams Toolkit CLI falls very much into this camp. I wish I understood the CLI. I feel like my commitment to myself is that the next long journey I go on, the next international flight, where there's no Wi-Fi, that kind of thing, I'm going to learn the CLI. That feels like a good time to just kind of practice it, because CLI learning is, you can do it. You learn by doing, though. It's a bit dry to read it. You do need to kind of play with it and try it out. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to learn the CLI. I'm just bringing it back to your attention because there's a bunch of interesting new things, and there's this new learn page all about it, because it's now available out in beta. There's a V3, that's out in beta. There is also a V1 and a V2. They're going to get deprecated soon, so it's worth just understanding. But this is a really nice way as a developer to very quickly get started building Teams out. If you already know your way around Microsoft Teams development and you know your way around the toolkit, then this is the accelerator for you, because this is obviously the command line interface for automating a lot of the Teams toolkit stuff. So you can do things like create a new Teams application. You can add features. So you can very quickly build up what it is you need to do. Now, I 100% will expect to see this in a Microsoft demo soon, probably build, where they will build the title will be building a Microsoft Teams application from scratch. And they're going to run 5 commands and have a fully working Teams application, which is really cool. You can build the app, you can add features to the app, you can validate it, you can publish it, you can host it. You can do the whole thing through the CLI. So very, very nice. But yeah, like I say, this is on my list to learn. I think it's a good one. And just bringing it back to your attention, because anything like this that makes us faster is good, right? And typing is not dead. Don't believe what those Copilot people tell you. Okay, finally, something that I don't know very much about, but I think is really interesting. So in the final minute, I'm going to go through it, but this I'm going to write up as a blog post later this week. There is a new program for bringing Microsoft 365 documents into third-party applications. So if you're an ISV, you're an app, or you're an app dev that's got their own application or service, this is kind of interesting. If you need to surface Microsoft 365 documents and let users edit them, this is like if you're old enough to remember ActiveX or OLE or anything like that, this kind of feels like this. This is embedding Office into your application. So you can take Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents, you can take them from SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, and you can embed them inside your application. You can also use the Live App. So this looks like the Live App SDK from that is in Teams that you can put into meetings. It looks like you can build it into your own application as well. I don't think that's new. I think that's being lumped in with this. I feel like you could already do this already. What's fascinating to me from the UC space is that the case study they use is Zoom. So they're talking about how Zoom are doing this so that users in Zoom meetings can collaborate on Microsoft 365 documents, which is bonkers to me. But there we go. That's really interesting. That the way that Microsoft are being so open there is fascinating. All right, I've spoken for far too long, so I'm going to keep it under 10 minutes and bid you farewell, and I shall see you next week.